Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us at this first session of our series of webinars on personal finance. Tonight, we have our insurance specialist, Munia, and investment advisor, Ron, who will share about why it makes sense to buy term insurance and invest the rest using a regular savings plan. You'll also learn how you can take advantage of our best investment ideas, as well as a wide range of professionally managed funds that match your risk appetite and ensure that you're taking the best approach for your financial planning and investing for your future. So I'm just going to hand the time over to our experts, and we'll start tonight with Munir.
So, hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Munir, and I'm one of the insurance specialists in FSMOne. So today I'll be covering a topic on does it make sense to buy term and invest the rest. Now, I believe there isn't any hard and fast rule on whether term insurance, whole life insurance, or even ILPs is the right product for that particular client. I always believe that the answer lies in the risk profile of the client and whether the client is aware that there are other cheaper alternatives out there with a higher coverage, but of course, explaining the terms, the pros and cons. Now, ultimately, insurance is a lifelong commitment. Now, spending too much money on insurance might hinder your wealth accumulation. However, having too little coverage might not be beneficial if an unforeseen events do occur. Now, it is important to find a right balance in both insurance and investments. Now, today I'll be sharing my part on insurance, and my colleague on my left, Ron, he will be sharing his part on investments. Now, before I touch on the coverages, I would like to talk a little bit more about investment-linked products and what are the alternatives for ILPs, determining which product and how much coverage, whether term or whole life, and lastly, of course, the pros and cons of investing in buy term and invest the rest, and lastly, why FSMOne. Now, I believe some point in our life, I'm pretty sure, 95% sure that some of our friends or family members who might be in this financial industry doing insurance would probably have spoken to you about investment-linked policy. Now, I remember when I first joined this financial industry, I was told that ILP's returns can be used to pay the premiums when you get older. Now, the investment-linked policy can also be used as a protection, as an investment, as well as investments. Now, you also have the flexibility to choose which type of funds would you like to invest in, or even perhaps for. Now, of course, returns on the illustrations are between 4 to 8%, and of course, these returns are never guaranteed. Right. Now, however, in investment-linked policies, there are fees and charges involved. Now, when ILP was first introduced in the market, it was more of a front-end loading. This means when you purchase this type of policy, the premiums that you pay, a certain percentage of it goes to investing. And the percentage increases along the way until you reach 100% or even 105% after the 5th year. Now, as you can see on my slide on the left, on the year 1 of policy, 15% of the premiums that you make goes to investing, and the remaining 85% of it form part of your agent's commission, insurer's fees, and charges. Now, of course, as time goes by, insurers are becoming more competitive, and of course, in this way, there's something called the back-end loading, and slightly different by 100% of the premiums go straight to investments. However, if you guys realize one thing is that both these policies do have high distribution and administrative costs. Now, these fees and charges are important to note because it can affect your long-term investment portfolio. And of course, I'll touch more about it at a later slide comparing ILPs and of course RSPs. let's take a look at some of the fees and charges. Now, firstly, there's a cost of insurance. So basically, if you are age 30 and you you are planning to get $100,000 coverage, it costs you 64 cents per every $1,000. Now, if you were to hold this for 30 years till age 60, the cost of insurance would have increased 10 times. Now, imagine if you hold it to age 70 or even age 80, the cost of insurance will increase drastically. Next, we have 4 other charges. Of course, some insurers call it differently, but I'm just listing out the common names. And of course, these all can be found in the product summary of the particular insurance policy. And of course, do note that the percentage charged by the insurer differs from insurers to insurers. So now, firstly, is the initial charge. Secondly, administrative. Thirdly, supplementary charge. And if you are looking to withdraw during the minimum investing period, there would be a partial withdrawal charge. So for initial charge, it is the same as policy charge. Some insurers charge 4% per annum on the initial unit account value, and these charges are deducted monthly, whereas some insurers calls it policy charge, and some insurers also charge 1.5% of the initial unit account value. Now, next is a supplementary charge. Now, other insurers calls it administrative charge. Now, the range, the charges range between 0.7% per year to 1.8% per year. So what are the alternatives for ILPs? Now, firstly, you have a whole life insurance. This is whereby clients can get protected for his or her entire life with a limited premium tenure of maybe 10, 20, or even 25 years. Now, a multiplier can also be added to boost the sum assured in a whole life insurance. Now, this means that if a client chooses a basic sum assured of $100,000 with 3 times multiplier, his coverage is 300,000, and after age 70, the sum assured would be reduced back to $100,000. Now, one thing to note about whole life insurance is that the premiums are high, and the reason behind this is because it builds up guaranteed cash value along the way. Now, of course, cash value can be used for retirement purposes. Now, next is a term insurance. Now, the protection is for a fixed time period whereby clients can get covered for 20 years, 30 years, or even till age 70 or age 80. Now, the coverage tenure is pretty flexible. The premiums for the term insurance are lower compared to a whole life insurance, and the reason is because there is no cash value for in a term insurance policy. Now, I'm pretty sure that some of you will be thinking, hey, Munir, I know you mentioned 3 products to me, but do I really need a life insurance coverage? Now, let me just share a short story about myself. Now, this is a picture. This is a picture of me, right? Sorry, this is not a picture of me. This is a picture of my dad on the left. Now, my dad worked as a taxi driver and he lived life to the fullest. Now, one thing that he didn't believe in was insurance. Now, I remembered clearly 1 year before he passed away, he was diagnosed with COPD. So it's called chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And the main cause of this was smoking. Now, my dad loves smoking. He can smoke 2 packs a day. Now, during a span of 1 year, my dad entered the ICU for 9 times. That means once a month on a regular basis. And after he passed on, my mother took on the role as a sole breadwinner of the house. The only thing that my dad left behind was just $12,000 and hospital bills to pay. My mom not only had to carry the emotional stress, she also took on the financial stress. Now, she continued to pay for my poly and university degree fees and while putting food on the table. But of course, I repaid her by graduating. Now, this is a picture of me 10 years ago. Yeah. So all these financial stress can actually be avoided. Thus, the next question will be, Munia, so how much must I be covered? Now, it all actually boils down to your current life stage. Are you single? Are you just graduated from university? Are you married with kids? If yes, how many kids? Or are you a single parent? Or are you still providing income for your parents? Now, I remember clearly when I first bought my first insurance policy. At that point of purchase, I was still fresh from army and wasn't in the financial industry yet. Thus, I asked my financial advisor, "Sir, may I know what is the desired sum assured?" Now, I remember that he said that if based on sorry, if for instance, if you earn $60,000 a year, you require 600,000 worth of life insurance benefit because it's at least 10 to 15 times of your annual income. That is a rule of thumb. But I believe that this method is pretty simplistic and assumes that one size fits all approach. Now, it doesn't take account your assets, family circumstances, or even future obligations. So this is one of the life stage that people of you in this audience might be in. You might be married. You're still providing $300 a month to your mother or father, probably age 50 or 60. You have a spouse, wife, or husband, or kids along the way. Now, firstly, in financial planning, we must always be grateful to our parents because they were the ones who brought us up. So thus, touch wood, if I am not around during my mother's retirement period, a sum of money would be my last act of love for them. Thus, if I'm contributing $300 a month to my mother. And you know that females do live until age 90 on average. You can take 300 multiplied by 12, multiplied by 40 years. Now, next, family expenses. Now, if your family expenses, monthly expenses, assuming it's $5,000, example, and the number of years to support this family, probably till my children grows up and start working, number of years might be 20, some of you might be 30, Now, this ensures that your family continues running and there will not be any financial stress on your spouse, touch wood if you are not around. So next, children's education needs. Now, if you are a parent, now, children's education is the top priority. Now, if you are no longer around, your spouse would have to take in more responsibilities for your kids' education. Thus, as you can see on the above article, it takes roughly 340,000 to bring up a child. Now, if you have two kids, of course, this number doubles. Now, next, lastly, is the outstanding debts. Now, I'm pretty sure that most people do not want to pass on their debts to their dependents in the event if anything happened to us. Now, thus, life insurance can be used to cover all these costs. Now, of course, outstanding debts includes mortgage loans, business loans, car loans, renovation loan, and etc. and things like that. So basically, once you have listed all of the above, you tally them up and get the final tally for their financial obligations. Now, the next step is to calculate your assets and resources. The assets includes your income, investments, rental income, CPF balances as part of your assets because your dependents will receive this money upon your death, right? So in order to calculate the next step is actually to calculate your current insurance coverage at the moment. Now, of course, this includes the national schemes such as the Dependent Protection Scheme. So once you have listed all these financial obligations, assets, you subtract all your assets from your financial obligations. And by doing so, you are able to determine how much sum assured you are looking at. Now, of course, if you are planning to get a second property or planning to have a kid in the next 5 years, it's always good to factor in these two. So, next, buy term, invest the rest, or whole life insurance. Now, let's take a scenario, male age 30, for 100,000 coverage. Premiums for whole life insurance is roughly about 1,008 thereabouts. So whereas getting a term insurance for a similar coverage, probably till age 65, it will cost you $162 per year. Thus, if you are planning to buy term to invest the rest, your main objective it is to actually invest the difference, and it is actually to beat or outperform the returns given by a traditional whole life insurance. So basically, if you put this 1,007 to a very conservative 4% growth rate on an investment vehicle for 25 years, example, we could be looking at roughly about 78,000 based on the future value. So how about IOP? Like what I mentioned in the first few slides, fees and charges do play an important role in the wealth accumulation period. Now, buying a fund through our ILP can incur a high cost, whereas buying a fund through Fund Supermart only incurs platform fee of 0.05% per quarter, assuming it's a fixed income fund. Now, I have computed some numbers so that you guys can visualize the returns from the ILPs and, of course, directly investing through Fund Supermart. So I've started an account value of 100,000 in both ILPs and unit trusts. As for the expenses for ILP, I put it at 3,000. I put it at 3%, whereas the expenses for UT, I put it at 0.2% per annum. So just now was 0.05% per quarter. I'll just round it up to 0.2% per annum. Now, as you can see over here, it takes 30 years for the account value to potentially hit 800,000, assuming the average returns of these two funds is 8%, assuming. Now, whereas the account value for the ILP only reaches 300,000 at the end of 30 years. Now, basically, so the question is, what are the alternatives to ILP then? So basically, if you are looking to buy term and invest the rest for investing, a monthly RSP would be ideal because it takes away the emotion away. And when it comes to investing, it's always good to advocate the dollar cost averaging method. Of course, do note that Fund Supermart has zero sales charge. And of course, 0.05% platform fee per quarter. Of course, it depends on the particular product that you're in. Now, so why FSMOne? The reason why is because we offer insurance solutions. We are salaried based and we are not commission driven. Therefore, we are not tied to any insurers. We only give independent advice. And of course, we believe in a low cost coverage. Here are our list of our partners that we onboard as a platform provider, and we are able to share which product actually suits you the best. All right. Now I would like to hand over my time to Ron as he will walk through with you regarding your investment journey. Ron, maybe you take it away from here.
All right, thanks, Munir. Thanks for the educating us about the coverage that Fund Supermart provides. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us once again. My name is Ron, and today I'll be sharing with you like what Munir has already covered about buy term. Now I'll be sharing more about invest the rest. So essentially, we would advise clients to invest via a regular savings plan, which is RSP for short. And in the next few slides, I will be touching on various topics such as products available for RSP, benefits of investing through RSP, and also how to construct a portfolio for yourself. So essentially, what is RSP? RSP is a monthly subscription plan where you contribute a fixed amount every month. The products available for RSP on our platform are unit trusts, exchange traded funds, ETFs for short, and assisted portfolio service, which is MAPS for short. MAPS is actually FSMOne's in-house investment solution, and we'll be going through that in detail later. Okay, first up, let's look at unit trusts. For the uninitiated, it is simply an unlisted, actively managed investment portfolio that consists of stocks, bonds, or both at the same time. So the monthly contribution amount minimum starts at $100 for most of our unit trust funds. And investing in unit trusts allows you to tap on the fund manager's expertise in certain areas. For example, some fund managers have a track record for picking undervalued stocks in the Asian region or in the tech sector. There is also greater flexibility in selecting what goes into the fund, which could generate potentially higher returns than related indices. Next up, ETFs. So ETFs are similar to unit trusts in the sense that both are investment portfolios that can consist of stocks or bonds. The main difference is that ETFs are listed on exchanges such as SGX or your New York exchange. It is also passively managed, meaning there are no fund managers to pick what goes into the portfolio. Rather, it just tracks and replicates the performance of an index, for example, the Straits Times Index or the S&P 500. Minimum monthly subscription starts at $50 a month. So basically, ETFs, they cost lesser to invest than unit trusts, as investors don't have to pay fund managers and their team of portfolios to find their team of analysts to find and pick securities to put inside the portfolio. So next up is Assisted Portfolio Service, MAPS for short in FSMOne. So what is MAPS? MAPS is a managed portfolio solution which we invest on your behalf. Generally, MAPS is suitable for new investors who are unsure of what to invest in or individuals who are too busy to monitor their investments. Of course, there are no restrictions on who can invest in MAPS as long as you have an FSMOne account. So MAPS lets you leverage on FSMOne's analysis and fund selections, which includes both unit trusts and ETFs. So portfolio upkeep is done by our own in-house portfolio managers. So what to invest in largely depends on why you invest. So it is important to know, to be clear on your investment objective first. So for example, if you need a sum of money in a year's time to get married, it would probably be safer to invest in short duration bond funds because they are less volatile. However, if you have a longer investment horizon, like saving for your toddler's university fees or your own retirement, perhaps you can consider high-yield bonds or global equities. So at this point, you might ask, what's so good about RSP? Well, firstly, RSP forces you to save in a disciplined manner. There is also no need to invest in initial capital, and we can make use of the dollar cost averaging mechanism to write out market cycles as illustrated in the graph by the graph on the right. And having no lock-in period allows you to withdraw your savings in case of emergency. You're also able to adjust your monthly contribution amount. So if you had a pay raise, you can increase it. And if you need to allocate funds to other areas, such as housing loans, you can decrease it. You just need to take note of each product's minimum investment amount. Okay, so how do you construct a portfolio for yourself? There are generally some considerations to take into account, such as asset allocation, like bonds, equities, or high yield bonds. Next, geographical diversification. to not just focus on one or two regions like US or Europe. And of course, your budget, how much you can set aside for your RSP. So here you can see the top performing assets of the past 10 years. It justifies why we need diversification in our portfolio because nobody can predict how markets are going to move. Usually markets will move first and we as investors simply find a justification for that movement. That is why it is important to have different assets in our portfolios. Because even if you are a super aggressive investor, we believe you should have a small percentage of bonds in your portfolio to act as a stabilizer. Okay, again, in terms of performance, there is really no consistency as to which region comes out on top. And that is another compelling reason for us to globally diversify our portfolio. So budget is also an important factor that affects how diversified we can be. I'll give you an example. If I work out to only have $100 to invest every month, then I can't possibly diversify my portfolio because I am only able to invest in a single fund every month. So the next best thing would be to invest my $100 into a global balanced fund and let the fund manager pick the asset and geographical allocation for me. Well, the disadvantage of investing in only in a balanced fund is I'm essentially putting all my eggs into one basket, which means if the fund manager makes a few bad calls, my entire portfolio would suffer. Similarly, if my monthly budget were to be higher and maybe $500 or $600, I can split my funds into 4 different buckets for different purposes. So bucket number 1 can be used to build up my emergency funds, and it's best to be invested into money market funds. Bucket number 2 for short-term liquidity can be invested into short duration bond funds. Bucket number 3, which is usually linked to the investment objectives that we discussed earlier, it can be invested into balanced funds. And bucket number 4, which is designed for long-term growth, can be invested into equity funds. Okay, by now, if you have already bought into the concept of buy term and invest the rest, and wish to know which unit trusts or ETFs to invest in, you can check out our recommended funds list for unit trusts and ETF, and our ETF focus list. For investors who wish to compare unit trusts or ETFs, we have the ETF selector and the fund selector to search for you to search for funds and compare up to 7 funds at the same time. Okay, perhaps I can do a short demonstration on how you can access our recommended funds or ETF focus list. Okay, so if you're at our FSMOne homepage, to look for our recommended funds, simply go to the funds tab and just click on recommended funds. And you can see our well-organized recommended funds list, which is split into core portfolio and supplementary portfolio. And we have also some balanced funds that can be used if you have a limited budget for your monthly RSP. To look for ETFs, our ETF focus list, simply go to ETFs and click on ETF focus list. And you'll be able to see all our recommendations for ETFs. And to make use of the fund selector, you can just head over to our tools and calculators, fund selector, and you'll be able to filter the different aspects of how you wish to search for a fund. For example, categories, you want to look at equity funds, and you want to filter by Asia Pacific ex-Japan. You can see all our funds available down here. Okay, so with that, I leave you with the theme of tonight, which is buy term, invest the rest. I'll hand the mic over back to Jonathan.
Right. Thank you, Ron. I think that's certainly advice that we can all take. And yeah, so thank you everyone for just joining us this evening. We hope that in this series of being able to share a little bit of wisdom from some of our experienced experts and analysts can just help you along in your journey to just manage your money better, and also to be able to still live life fruitfully without feeling like you're having to pinch pennies. Do look out on FSMOne.com. We've got a couple of more exciting webinars on the way. Um, whenever there's a new one, they will always appear as articles, so stay tuned to those. We also send out a daily e-newsletter called the FSMOne Bulletin. That is where you can read some of our analysts' research into markets, and they constantly look out for profitable ideas where you can tap into. So we hope we found this session useful. So thank you all, and hope wishing you all good health and stay safe. And good night.